Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I want you to listen closely because what I'm about to say may sting a little. Imagine the moment you discover the person you gave your trust, your heart, and your loyalty to betrayed you. The world doesn't just break, it caves in. Suddenly, every laugh you shared, every touch, every late-night promise feels tainted, and you ask yourself that haunting question: why wasn't I enough? But here's the truth. No one told you. Cheating isn't always about you not being enough. It's about a secret, a hidden dynamic in relationships that most men never learn, and because of that ignorance, they suffer. Men like you are walking into relationships blind, and the pain comes not because you're weak, but because you were never handed the manual. No father sat you down to explain it. No woman was ever honest enough to admit it. And society distracts you with cliches instead of truth. That's why you're here. Because deep down, you want to understand what really drives a woman to step outside of the bond she swore to protect. I need you to let go of everything you think you know about loyalty, because it's not what it seems. Most men believe women cheat when they're bored, when they're seduced, or when they're tempted by someone better looking. But no. The reality runs much deeper and far darker. A woman cheats when something critical inside her relationship dies, when an emotional hunger festers silently, unnoticed, while you keep telling yourself everything is fine. And here's the catch. Sometimes she doesn't even fully understand it herself. She just feels the pull, the restlessness, the craving for something missing. And if you've ever wondered why men cheat, the reasons often look shallow: desire, novelty, ego. But when women cheat, it's rarely about simple desire. It's about connection, about validation, about an emotional wound they believe you can't or won't heal. And here's where the gut punch lands. If you understood these hidden signals, if you knew what she truly needed but never voiced, if you could see the storm forming before it broke, you could have prevented it. That's the painful irony. She didn't cheat because you weren't valuable. She cheated because neither of you understood the hidden battlefield of intimacy. Let's be brutally honest. Most men never notice the small things until it's too late. The subtle withdrawals, the sighs that linger a little too long, the eyes that glance past you instead of at you. You tell yourself she's stressed, tired, or busy, but in reality, she's signaling a deeper dissatisfaction, an emotional starvation you weren't trained to recognize. And here's the kicker. It's not about grand gestures. Women don't always need diamonds or vacations to feel loved. They need presence, understanding, and acknowledgement. They need a man who sees the unspoken, hears the silence, and validates the weight she carries without judgment. Most men miss this, and that gap, that silent void, is where cheating quietly seeps in. You might think, I would have noticed, I would have prevented it. But you're missing the point. Relationships aren't built on reaction. They're built on anticipation. Emotional literacy isn't something taught in school. It's something learned painfully, often too late. And this isn't about blame. You aren't weak, and she isn't evil. It's a blind spot, a psychological battlefield you both entered without armor. Women will never openly tell you their dissatisfaction before it's too late. They hope, they test, they retreat silently, and if the emotional vacuum persists, their minds start wandering. Not because you failed to love, but because love alone isn't enough when it lacks emotional insight. And here's the truth many men refuse to admit. Women cheat more often for emotional reasons than physical ones. Feeling unseen, unheard, or unvalued can drive her to seek solace elsewhere, even unconsciously. That's why the world mislabels her behavior as betrayal alone. It's not the act, it's the neglect. It's the silent erosion of connection, the absence of psychological intimacy that's far more damaging than lust. She doesn't want another man because he's better. She wants what she once had and thought she lost. If you could have learned this before she left, before the affair, before the heartbreak, you'd have a secret weapon. You'd recognize the cracks forming and know how to fix them. Not with gifts, not with arguments, but with presence, attention, and understanding that transcends simple physicality. Because men who understand this never just survive relationships, they thrive in them. Now, listen carefully, because this is where most men completely misunderstand the landscape of a woman's heart. You see, it's not just about noticing when she withdraws, it's about why she withdraws. Women are emotional architects. They build their sense of security brick by brick, conversation by conversation, touch by touch. Every dismissive comment you make, every distracted glance at your phone, every time you prioritize work over her unspoken needs, it's another brick she silently removes. And here's the cruel reality. By the time you realize the walls are crumbling, she's already exploring avenues to repair what she feels is broken. Sometimes that avenue is outside the relationship. Most men think that loyalty is about control or possession. Wrong. Loyalty is about emotional resonance. It's about creating an environment where she never even contemplates stepping away because her needs are met, her heart is acknowledged, and her mind feels safe. If you fail to deliver that consistently, no matter how much you love her, her eyes and her curiosity will wander. And don't confuse curiosity with malice. Women cheat emotionally long before anything physical occurs. It begins with a conversation she craves, a vulnerability she wants to share, a connection she's desperate to feel. If you aren't tuned into that wavelength, you're already losing ground without even knowing it. Here's the secret most men never learn. Emotional absence hurts more than physical absence. You could be in the same room, holding her hand, yet she feels alone if her inner world isn't mirrored and validated. That alone creates a fertile ground for infidelity. Not because she's bad, but because humans crave reciprocity, understanding, and emotional intimacy. And when she seeks it elsewhere, it isn't always premeditated. It's instinctive survival. Her mind reaching for the connection she cannot find at home. The harsh truth is, most men don't recognize the first warning signs because society never prepared you for emotional responsibility. It's easier to assume that if you provide financially, protect her, and show affection occasionally, you've done enough. You haven't. Emotional maintenance is daily, it's constant, and neglected for even a short period, and the consequences are catastrophic. She doesn't need to announce her dissatisfaction. She's counting on you to see it before it manifests in betrayal. Understanding this is your turning point. It's the difference between heartbreak and mastery. Because a man who sees the invisible fissures in his relationship and addresses them before they crack the foundation never fears infidelity. He understands the terrain, navigates it with foresight, and creates loyalty that isn't demanded. It's freely given. Here's the part that will make you uncomfortable, but you need to hear it. Cheating rarely happens in a vacuum. It's not sudden. It's a slow unraveling of intimacy, trust, and connection. And most men are blind to it because they focus on the wrong indicators: physical attraction, fights, or visible flirtations. But the truth lies beneath the surface. Emotional neglect is the silent predator in your relationship. It eats away at her sense of belonging, her desire to confide, and her trust in you. And when that foundation erodes, no apologies, gifts, or promises can fully repair it. Because by then, the wound is in her perception of you, not in your actions alone. Men tend to underestimate the power of consistent emotional absence. It's not about one missed conversation or one argument. It's the accumulation of dismissals, the subtle invalidation of feelings, the small rejections disguised as not a big deal. Over time, her mind starts seeking validation elsewhere, sometimes subconsciously, sometimes consciously. She doesn't set out to hurt you. She sets out to feel alive, acknowledged, and understood. And if you've failed to provide that environment, someone else will. And that's not betrayal, it's biology and psychology. It's her survival mechanism for emotional fulfillment. Most men focus on external threats, a colleague, a friend, or a stranger. They never focus on internal deficiencies, themselves. The brutal truth is, if you cannot meet her emotional needs, or at least recognize them, you are not fully present. She doesn't need perfection. She needs awareness, attentiveness, and emotional consistency. When you ignore these signals, you give space for temptation. And when temptation enters a vacuum, it becomes irresistible because it offers exactly what she has been starved of: acknowledgement, emotional intimacy, and a feeling of being truly seen. Here's the hardest part. Even if she cheats, it's not always about dissatisfaction with you as a person. It's about dissatisfaction with the relationship dynamic. She's looking for a mirror, a man who reflects her emotional reality, who validates her internal struggles without judgment. If she finds that mirror outside the relationship, the consequences can be devastating, but the cause is not always malice. It's neglect, ignorance, and misalignment. And the ultimate tragedy? Most men only realize this after it's too late. Your only power, and it's a massive one, lies in understanding this. Understanding her unspoken needs, reading the invisible cues, being proactive before she's forced to look elsewhere. Emotional foresight is your armor. It's what transforms heartbreak into wisdom, betrayal into clarity, and ignorance into mastery. Now let's get practical, because understanding alone won't save you from heartbreak. You need action, strategy, and emotional intelligence. Most men wait for a crisis before they act. They think a romantic gesture or a last-minute apology will patch what's already crumbling. That's naive. Emotional connection isn't built in grand displays. It's cultivated daily in small, deliberate actions. A text that acknowledges her stress, a conversation where you listen more than you speak, noticing the small shifts in her mood, and responding with empathy. These are not trivial. They are the building blocks of loyalty and the shield against temptation. Pay attention to her language, the things she says between words. Women often express dissatisfaction indirectly, subtle complaints, sarcasm, or hints about what they wish you understood. Most men hear the words, miss the meaning, and dismiss it. That's a mistake that costs relationships. If she says she's tired of feeling alone in the relationship, don't offer solutions right away. Reflect, validate, ask what she truly needs. Emotional responsiveness isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. And presence, constant and consistent, is far more powerful than charm or sex. Men who master this don't just prevent cheating, they create an unbreakable bond. They learn to read the invisible, to respond before a crisis even emerges. They make intimacy not just physical, but psychological. And here's the crucial insight. She needs to feel safe being vulnerable with you without fear of judgment or dismissal. That's where emotional fidelity begins. Because women don't cheat out of malice. They cheat when they no longer feel understood or seen in the relationship they once trusted. Also, recognize your role in your own growth. Emotional awareness, psychological insight, and self-improvement are not optional. They are essential. A man who invests in understanding female psychology, in decoding relational dynamics, and in improving himself constantly, doesn't just attract loyalty, he sustains it. He becomes the man a woman doesn't even consider leaving because he satisfies the invisible, internal needs she can't voice elsewhere. Finally, understand timing. You can't fix neglect after betrayal. You must act before signs of emotional drift escalate. This requires vigilance, humility, and consistent emotional labor. And yes, it's demanding, but consider this. The reward is not just preventing cheating. It's creating a relationship where love, trust, and intimacy are so deeply rooted that neither boredom nor temptation can uproot them. Now, let's confront the uncomfortable truths most men refuse to see. Cheating doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, a psychological drift that begins long before the act itself. And here's what men get wrong. They blame the other man, the temptation, or the moment of weakness. But the real culprit is neglect disguised as normalcy. You think everything is fine because she smiles, she laughs, she kisses you goodnight. But beneath that veneer, subtle cracks are forming. Emotional withdrawal, unmet needs, and small dismissals accumulate like silent termites, quietly undermining the foundation of your relationship. Pay attention. It's in the details. The half-hearted compliments, the distracted conversations, the moments you brush off her concerns as not a big deal. These are triggers. They don't scream betrayal, they whisper it. And when a woman feels unseen and unheard repeatedly, her mind begins a quiet calculation. She doesn't consciously plan betrayal. She searches for what she's been denied: acknowledgement, appreciation, understanding, and intimacy. And when she senses someone, even unknowingly, offering it, a part of her attention drifts. It's instinct, not malice, and if unchecked, it grows. Most men underestimate the psychological pull of being understood. She doesn't need your approval. She needs resonance, a mirror for her emotions, a safe space for her vulnerabilities, and a partner who notices the unsaid. Neglect this, and no amount of material provision, sexual attention, or superficial charm can compensate. The human mind craves connection, and if it's denied in one place, it will seek it elsewhere. That's not betrayal in essence. It's survival. Here's another critical point. Men often misread signs of emotional drift. They see moodiness or distance as rebellion, attitude or drama, rather than as SOS signals. And instead of tuning in, they react with frustration, withdrawal, or arguments. This accelerates the drift, deepening the void. Emotional intelligence isn't just desirable, it's essential. Recognizing the triggers, understanding the unmet needs, and responding with calm attention can stop infidelity before it even becomes a thought. So ask yourself, are you listening to the invisible? Are you seeing beyond her words? Are you aware of the quiet erosion that could one day lead her elsewhere? Awareness isn't just power, it's prevention. And prevention isn't passive. It's an active, deliberate, daily choice to see her, to hear her, and to meet the emotional obligations most men neglect. Now, let's talk about reclamation, the kind that separates men who survive heartbreak from men who thrive in love. Emotional dominance isn't about control or manipulation. It's about presence, understanding, and consistency. It's about becoming a man whose internal stability anchors the relationship, making her feel seen, safe, and understood at every level. When you achieve this, infidelity doesn't just become unlikely, it becomes irrelevant. She isn't leaving you for another man. She's anchored to the depth of the emotional bond you've created. Here's the truth most men never grasp. Women don't crave perfection. They crave reliability. They crave a man whose attention is deliberate, whose listening is active, and whose responses are thoughtful. It's the tiny, seemingly insignificant actions repeated daily that create emotional gravity. A man who remembers what she whispered in passing, who acknowledges her victories, fears, and frustrations, who validates without judgment, he becomes irreplaceable. And when she feels this level of emotional presence, the thought of looking elsewhere fades before it even forms. Another secret: vulnerability is your weapon. Most men hide it, fearing weakness. But vulnerability, shared at the right time, with honesty and self-awareness, creates intimacy that can never be replicated outside the relationship. She will never leave a man who holds his emotions with courage, who shares his fears without aggression, and who invites her into his inner world. This isn't weakness. This is mastery. It's emotional strategy. It's understanding that the bond you share must be deeper than temptation can pierce. Consistency is the multiplier. One act of presence isn't enough. One conversation, one gesture, one acknowledgement. It's temporary. The woman who feels neglected will always remember the gaps more vividly than the gestures. Emotional loyalty is built through repetition, not episodes. Every day, every interaction, every acknowledgement strengthens the invisible threads that tie her heart to yours. Neglect them once, and the cracks resurface. Nurture them consistently, and no outside influence can match what you offer. Finally, the ultimate insight: control your own emotional state. A man who is grounded, self-aware, and emotionally intelligent cannot be shaken by external threats. He notices the small shifts in her demeanor, responds before they escalate, and creates an environment where loyalty is natural, not demanded. When you master this, you move from fear of infidelity to absolute confidence in connection. You don't just prevent cheating, you create a bond that's untouchable. Now let's bring it all together, because this is where the truth hits hardest. You've learned that cheating rarely starts with desire. It starts with neglect, emotional absence, and unmet psychological needs. You've seen that women crave resonance, validation, and emotional safety far more than material gestures or physical attention. You understand that emotional literacy, vigilance, and consistent presence are the difference between heartbreak and unshakable intimacy. But knowing this isn't enough. You have to act. Ask yourself, are you truly present in your relationship? Do you notice the subtle shifts in her mood, the quiet withdrawals, the hints of dissatisfaction she never speaks aloud? Or are you waiting for a crisis to force your attention? Emotional mastery is preventive, not reactive. A man who understands this doesn't wait for betrayal. He prevents it. He reads the invisible cues, validates the unspoken, and builds a bond so strong that no temptation, no distraction, and no moment of weakness can fracture it. Here's another truth that most men will never hear. Relationships are mirrors. They reflect your emotional strengths and weaknesses, your attentiveness, and your willingness to grow. If she drifts emotionally, it's often because the reflection she receives is incomplete. You must become the man who consistently reflects her needs back with understanding, care, and emotional integrity. That reflection creates loyalty, and loyalty is what keeps temptation irrelevant. And finally, remember this: love alone cannot prevent infidelity. Emotional insight, consistency, vulnerability, and presence. These are the tools of a man who builds a bond that cannot be broken. You cannot control her choices, but you can control the environment in which those choices are made. You can cultivate connections so deep, so resonant, and so consistent that leaving simply isn't an option. That is the power of emotional mastery. Now here's your challenge. Take a moment to reflect and calculate your own relationship equation. Am I giving her more emotional presence than I demand in return? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this video gave you insight, like it, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs to hear this truth before it's too late. Because the difference between heartbreak and mastery isn't luck. It's awareness, action, and emotional courage.